Hello and welcome to the CivilNet studio. Today our guest is Dr. Abhinav Pandya, founder and director of the Usanas Foundation, an India-based geopolitical and security affairs think tank. He's in Armenia to speak at Armenia's annual forum, and he's joined us to give the Indian perspective on relations with Armenia. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Pandya.
Thank you very much.
Well, we have a lot of interest from India. We've seen it in our views recently, whenever we talk about something Indian. So there really is something going on here between Armenians and India. We see this, of course, on the issue of the level of states, but also on the level of people to people. I believe this is getting stronger. So this alliance has also perhaps been transformed in just the past couple months with the conflict that we saw in Kashmir going on that has really, I think, galvanized Indians against Azerbaijan and Turkey. So can you tell us what strategic value does Armenia have for India? And does this partnership align with New Delhi's broader regional goals?
Thank you very much. You started this interview with a very interesting question about India-Armenia's civilizational ties. I'll come to that later, but before that, I'll answer your immediate question. That's the strategic value of India-Armenia relationship, and that too the changes in the context of the recent conflict between India and Pakistan. Okay. So, well, I must say that lately the Indian strategic establishment has become more sensitive to the growing alliance between Pakistan, Turkey and Azerbaijan. And this is something which is, very personal to me, because I was the first researcher in India, while working as a security advisor to the governor of Jammu and Kashmir back in 2019. I had written a paper exposing Turkey's strong support to Pakistan after India abrogated Article 370 in Kashmir. So Article 370 conferred a special status to Kashmir, under which all kinds of jihadist elements were flourishing. And Turkey at that time was increasing its penetration in Jammu and Kashmir and supporting all kinds of separatist and anti-India elements. India abrogated Article 370. After that, Turkey emerged as the staunchest supporter of Pakistan in the international fora. And then gradually over time, the Indian strategic establishment and diplomats, which were till then quite unaware, or I must say quite unresponsive to Turkey's growing anti-India activities, they became more and more aware regarding what Turkey was doing and also Azerbaijan's interest in South Asian conflict. Then Nagorno-Karabakh war came, and we saw that Pakistanis were supporting Azerbaijan. They even sent their soldiers, they were sending their weapon systems, and as recently as yesterday, I came to know that Azerbaijan has increased the number of fighter jets which it's buying from Pakistan. Now they are buying about 40 JF-17 fighter jets from Pakistan. So this whole alliance between Turkey, Pakistan and Azerbaijan is strengthening, and that is a cause of concern for India, because we are fighting with Pakistan in Kashmir. Pakistan is supporting all kinds of jihadist elements in India. Now to counter that, India needs Armenia, because in this region, Armenia is also fighting against Turkey and fighting against Azerbaijan. There's a lot of divergence, a lot of conflict of interest. So I think, to create that international platform or that international front, or at a diplomatic level at least, not at the military level to begin with, but at the diplomatic level to begin with, India needs Armenia. And definitely we have a lot of shared interest, we are both as a country troubled by the Turkey's policies, the Turkey's jihadist policies and Turkey's expansionist policies in Kashmir. As I already mentioned, they are supporting Pakistan. Here also we have seen how Turkey has been supporting Azerbaijan and all kinds of aggressive actions which Azerbaijan has taken place in Nagorno-Karabakh, and even in the near and distant future, the conflict seems likely to be happening soon in this region also. So I think there's a lot of strategic value, and India has sold a large number of weapons to Armenia in this region. So as of now, because since India has sold a large number of weapon systems to Armenia, many countries are thinking that India is expanding its strategic footprint in this region. India is deepening that footprint. But here I have a slightly different take. Well, definitely no doubt that this partnership has a very strong strategic angle. The diplomatic part, I just mentioned that, by aligning with Armenia or the like-minded countries like Greece, Cyprus, India creates a strong international front against Turkey, and other adversarial countries like Pakistan. But by supplying weapon systems to Armenia, this partnership takes a slightly different level. It goes to an altogether new level, a different level. And that is the level of strategic partnership between Armenia and India. So in various quarters, the security quarters and diplomatic quarters, people have started talking about this robust strategic partnership between India and Armenia. But as far as India's stance is concerned, India is a slightly conservative power. So India right now is focusing on selling its weapon systems to Armenia, but India will be hesitant in making a very overt and a very observable display of power or its intentions to show its strategic footprint in that region. But since this Operation Sindoor has happened in the recent past, India-Pakistan conflict has come to a very different level. And now we saw that India fired missiles on Pakistan. In the future also, this war can escalate any time, because now all bets are off. Pakistan is not going to stop terror activities in Jammu and Kashmir. So this war can happen anytime in the future also. Given that, India is likely to expand and likely to strengthen its relationship with Armenia, because since we know that in the future war also Pakistan will be very strongly supported by Turkey and Azerbaijan. So I think we need Armenia more now, and this relationship is going to get stronger.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. Because even though there's been a lot of talk of the potential, and there is a lot of potential of Armenia-India relations, perhaps before the Operation Sindoor, it was more of just business as usual. But have you seen a transformation in perhaps this has really made them realize? Because there was a huge movement on social media. I've heard about this from Indians saying boycott Azerbaijan and Turkey, stop going there. Do you see that things are perhaps now changing for the long term because of Operation Sindoor?
Yeah, I see that this change, or I must say, the rejuvenation of India-Armenia ties is happening at two different levels. First, let's talk about the governmental level. So, until recently, I must say that our diplomatic brass and even our strategic experts were quite reluctant to admit the fact that Turkey has been supporting Pakistan and Turkey is an adversary. They were quite reluctant to admit that. And even after India abrogated Article 370 in 2019 and Turkey came out as the very strong supporter of Pakistan, India's engagements with Turkey continued. And India had signed the shipbuilding consultancy contract. Now you imagine the contract was cancelled 6 to 7 years after that Article 370 episode. It was cancelled in 2014. But after the Operation Sindoor, India has cancelled the contract with Celebi, which is a Turkish firm, and it was taking care of the ground operations at the 9 critical airports in India. So now India has cancelled that contract with Turkey. Celebi is no more in charge of taking care of the ground operations. Also the shipbuilding consultancy contract. This is happening at the government level. At the people level, popular level, we can see that people are increasingly becoming more aware about Pakistan's deep ties with Turkey and Azerbaijan, and they've stopped going to Turkey and Azerbaijan as tourists, because these two countries were most popular tourist destinations in India until recently. And as you mentioned, there was a big social media movement and people started boycotting Turkey. There were massive cancellations of their visits to Turkey. So I guess I think that is going to impact the tourism in Turkey and Azerbaijan majorly, because Indian tourists are quite large in number. We have a huge population, and that also makes our tourists also quite significant in terms of size and number. So I think that is going to be a very lasting phenomenon. And if Turkey and Azerbaijan are refused or are cancelled as tourist destination, Armenia is likely to be emerge as a next very preferred destination. And I see a great potential here, because I think that Armenia has an excellent climate, very natural beauty and everything, and also a very favorable social climate in terms of friendly people and everything. India enjoys a credible goodwill here, and Indians like to organize destination weddings. So I think Armenia is a very good spot for that. And if Armenia pays some attention to tourism, makes the visa and the entry thing a little bit more easier for Indians, I guess Indian tourists would love to come here. And another question is of the direct flight. Yes, right now, because there are no direct flight, that makes a little difficult, for most of the Indians, and they get a little discouraged. But I'm told that the direct flights are going to start very soon, hopefully by September this year. If that happens, then there's no, I would say, nothing stopping tourism between India and Armenia, and I can see that this is going to really go up.
Armenia would be wise to even start leasing flights right now. Get on that as soon as possible. This is the moment. So now there is one complicating factor in the relations, and that's the fact that India is not close, and in between us is Iran. So while Armenia has good relations with Iran, and there are the project of a Chabahar port, which would link India to Iran, and then that could go through Iran up to Armenia. But of course, Iran is under sanctions globally. That makes this a very controversial problem. So how do you assess the potential and the challenges of this kind of linkage, including Iran?
So another critical factor I mentioned, like the first part which I mentioned about India-Armenia relationship, is the strategic side, and the most important constituent of that relationship is India's interest in Armenia in the context of a rising equation and rising bond between Pakistan, Turkey and Azerbaijan. Now the second critical aspect of this relationship is the strategic connectivity project, or the transport corridor, that is INSTC. India desperately needs a connectivity to Europe, a land connectivity. In the past we had, but after the formation of Pakistan and Pakistan's capture of the Kashmir part, which ideally legitimately belongs to us, Pakistan illegally captured it. So after that, we don't have an overland access to Central Asia and also to Europe. So India needs that. And in that, so given that requirement, India was paying a very heavy attention to INSTC. And more recently, after this, the worsening situation in the Middle Eastern region, it seems that the future of IMAC is in danger. The India-Middle East connectivity project, that looks a little difficult, project in the future because of the rising tensions in the Middle East. So that makes INSTC even more important for India. But again, the problems in the INSTC are also very severe. Okay? A few challenges that I see in the implementation of INSTC is that the question of Iran. Iran is facing sanctions, and the recent reports which are coming in the news media over the last few days, it seems that the war is coming in that region very soon.
Israel wants to attack.
Yes,
possibly.
That's a very strong possibility. Besides that, all the big firms are facing sanctions while operating in Iran. That is another big question. Another part that I want to discuss in this region, that in this particular matter, is that even in INSTC, right now INSTC passes through Azerbaijan, the
This
Baku
north-south
region.
corridor for our viewers. It's this north-south corridor that would go from India to Iran, and then either Azerbaijan or Armenia, and then on to Russia, and then to Europe.
But we are talking about this corridor, the passing through Armenia. So now if Armenia is brought in the picture, then this corridor has to pass through the Syunik region of Armenia, and from that Syunik province it goes upward, goes straight to Georgia, and from there India can get land route connectivity to Russia, to Europe. But then once again, if this project has to go through the Syunik region, there are many geopolitical considerations involved here, and we know about what Zangezur project is, and what how Azerbaijan is looking at this region. So these are also quite important challenges when we talk about INSTC passing through Syunik corridor. But definitely it is in India's interest if INSTC passes through Syunik corridor, because given the fact that Pakistan has very strong ties with Azerbaijan, in the future, if equations between India and Pakistan worsen, then that transport corridor passing through the Azerbaijani region can have some sabotage-related problems, because Pakistan will have a footprint there, and Indian transport vehicles, or they will be vulnerable to Pakistani machinations.
Well, as you've outlined, Armenia and India are both facing major challenges but hopefully through these challenges, it'll bring our countries closer together. Dr. Pandya, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for joining CivilNet.